Live across Queensland, this is 7 News with Katrina Blowers.
Good afternoon. Our top stories on 7. A family disappointed by the sentence handed to a drug driver who ran down and killed their grandfather. A leading international energy official sounds a bleak warning for the world economy if the Iran war drags on. Could you go 3 weeks without using your car? The study that put 20 Brisbane drivers to the test. And disappointment for local cricket fans as the Gabba misses out on big games again. Good afternoon. The family of a Northgate grandfather mowed down on his morning walk have slammed the sentence handed to the killer driver. Ryan Hassel had a cocktail of drugs in his system, some at toxic levels, when he got behind the wheel. Garth Burley reports.
Good afternoon. It's just wrong. It's horrible. Those are the words of Mark Trestrail's family upon learning the driver who ran down the father and grandfather may only spend 12 months in jail. The 73-year-old was killed while on a morning walk near his home in Northgate 2 years ago. Ryan Hassel today admitted losing control, mounting the footpath and hitting Mr. Trestrail. The court heard the 25-year-old was on a cocktail of drugs, including meth, at toxic levels. He told police he'd only had 8 to 10 beers the night before and that he lost control of the car while changing the radio station. He pleaded guilty to dangerous driving causing death and was sentenced to 5 years, suspended after 12 months in prison.
Very disappointed. We came here to, see justice, some form of justice, and we feel quite let down. He was loved, he was funny, and he deserved to go out on his own terms, not by the actions of someone else.
The court heard Hassel had been on a good behaviour bond for drug possession at the time of the crash. The judge was impressed by Hassel's commitment to rehab and counselling, but said he needed to spend time in jail. He's also been disqualified from driving for 2.5 years.
A sobering warning this afternoon about the threat posed by America and Israel's war with Iran. The head of the International Energy Agency says today's oil shock is now worse than the 2 that happened half a century ago, triggering a global recession. Tim Lester is following this story from Federal Parliament.
In Canberra and meeting with the Energy Minister and the Prime Minister, International Energy Agency Chief Executive Fateh Birol has heaped praise on Australia, both for developing renewable energy and for our capacity to export gas.
Australia can well be a rising star of the global energy economy because you have everything here.
The energy chief visiting in the middle of a crisis he acknowledges is already far worse than the old benchmarks of destructive oil shocks.
The amount of oil we lost is equal to 2 oil price shocks in the 70s, which led the world to recession.
This as pressure builds from Parliament's crossbench for the government to impose new taxes on gas exporters as the Iran war drives a whole new demand for Australian gas.
It's not their gas. It's not the government's gas. It's not the opposition's gas. It's our gas.
Australians are sick of paying more in beer excise and more in HEXTRA payments than we get from our gas tax.
The head of the International Energy Agency says Australians deserve a fair share of energy profits, but he also offered this caution.
Energy investors are like butterflies. When they are scared, they fly away.
This as Prime Minister Albanese confirms he has spoken today with Singapore's PM Lawrence Wong, the 2 leaders undertaking to support the flow of fuel and gas between the 2 countries.
Meantime, time is running out for Iran after Donald Trump gave it 48 hours to reopen the Strait of Hormuz or face the consequences. As Jacqueline Robson reports, Tehran is showing no sign it will meet the president's deadline of tomorrow, our time.
Well, the US president's threat to obliterate Iran's power plants if it does not open the Strait of Hormuz in 48 hours has been met with the same aggression. Iran not balking at that threat, instead vowing to retaliate, hitting energy infrastructure right across the Gulf that has any kind of ties to the US. It says it will also keep the Hormuz Strait closed to those who, quote, violate our soil. Right now, that's been the majority of ships. Only a few have passed through, some even offering to pay money to get through that critical route, with the oil price now stuck above $110 a barrel. Today, Israel's Prime Minister took a look at two sites where the sophisticated Iron Dome defences failed. Iranian ballistic missiles hitting two separate sites in the southern part of the country, very close to a nuclear research centre, injuring more than 150 people.
If you want proof that Iran endangers the entire world, the last 48 hours have given it. In the last 48 hours, Iran targeted a civilian area. They're doing that as a mass murder weapon.
Civilians are being impacted on all fronts of this war. There have been fresh US-Israeli strikes across Tehran, and in Lebanon, Israel has been ramping up its attacks on Hezbollah, blowing up critical infrastructure, including an important bridge that separates the southern part of Lebanon to the northern part. Some suggest that is a precursor to a ground invasion. Beirut right now in the grips of a humanitarian crisis. There are more than 1 million people displaced and more than 1,000 people have been killed.
A 32-year-old man has been charged with attempted murder, accused of torturing a 46-year-old woman. Sheenan Lloyd faced Caboolture Magistrates Court today, accused of 6 offences after holding the woman at a Linvale property against her will. Lloyd remains behind bars and will face Ipswich Court in April. Police in Sydney are looking at whether everyone was wearing a seatbelt when a car slammed into a tree in the city's west. 1 man was killed and 2 were among 5 others injured. Sam Payne reports.
Good afternoon. Well, Western Sydney residents here in Darrock have rushed out to a sickening scene last night after a car veered off the road, slamming directly into a tree. You could hear it coming down the road moments before impact. Inside the vehicle, 6 people, including 2 young children. 1 man died on impact. The rest were helped by members of the public on Stewart Road until emergency services arrived.
I went up and opened the door and the driver fell out and I could hear the kids screaming. I grabbed the kid out of the car seat. When I opened the front door, all the adults that were in the car were in the front seat.
They were yelling and screaming. There was kids crying as well. It was just a scene that's, it was pretty scary. Yeah.
The children were taken to the Children's Hospital at Westmead in stable conditions. The surviving adults, 3 men and 1 female driver, suffered more serious injuries.
There was no seatbelts used except for the infant in the car seat, because I don't know how they all ended up in the front seat on top of each other.
Police are now investigating exactly what happened in the lead up to the crash, including why there were 6 people in the car and a child in the front seat. It's understood they're still waiting to interview the driver and her passengers.
The King's baton relay ahead of the Glasgow Commonwealth Games stopped off in Townsville today on its way to meet the Governor-General in Sydney tomorrow. It was an opportunity to highlight King Charles's passion for the environment with a beach clean-up.
He was an environmentalist when it wasn't popular. And the British press were really nasty to him and said what an idiot he was because loving trees and things. And now everyone sort of knows he was right.
The baton relay winds up in Launceston when 7-time Commonwealth Games gold medalist Ariane Titmus takes it for a visit to her childhood pool. Now for a look at the weather, and Tony, a bit of a mixed bag out there today.
Yes, Katrina, a little bit of sun and rain. Now, this was the view over Eagle Farm this morning. Plenty of blue sky in the foreground, while we can see the tops of distant storm clouds in the distance. The wispy appearance on the top of these clouds shows ice crystals, and it's the friction between these ice crystals that results eventually in lightning and then thunder. Now, we've seen a few of those showers sweeping from coastal areas further inland today, and a few more lightning strikes with these inland cells this afternoon, but nothing too severe in there. And not much change in those temperatures either. Brisbane dropped to 20 overnight before posting a top of 29 degrees. Now, looking ahead, we're expecting a low, not a tropical cyclone, to sweep past our coast and right through our swell window. That'll bring a significant bump in wave heights from tomorrow for a few days, and winds are looking good for our famous point breaks on the Gold and Sunshine Coast, so it's great news for experienced surfers. Katrina, I promise I'll turn up to work this week, and I'll be back soon with tomorrow's forecast.
I was going to say, where's Tony going to be? Thank you. Well, coming up in 7 News, Queensland community groups join forces calling on the state government to do more to help struggling families with kids. It's with the lawyers. Kyle Sandilands sues his old bosses for dumping him. And an explosion brings down 2 apartment blocks in Rome. In 7 News, drive-offs, abuse and running dry, independent servos on the brink. No summer cricket tests at the Gabba. The King's baton hits the beach in Townsville. The push to holiday at home this Easter. And will the Broncos skipper be match fit for the Battle of Brisbane? 7 News at 6.
Sunrise!
Let's get together
For brekkie.
When I knew that I was getting to hang out with y'all, I said, come on, let's do it.
News, sport,
weather,
stars,
singers,
and winners.
Get your day started right.
Start with Sunrise.
Sacked Sydney shock jock Kyle Sandilands has launched formal legal action against his former employer over the termination of his $100 million contract. Court documents have been served in the federal court against ARN and Commonwealth Broadcasting Corporation. Sandilands argues the network had no valid grounds to end his 10-year deal because there was no act of serious misconduct or breach of contract. ARN disputes those claims. A coalition of 26 frontline community groups have launched a new campaign today, pressing the government to do more to help struggling families. It's called Raising Queensland, and joining me now is the CEO of the Queensland Council of Social Service, Amy McVeigh. Amy, thanks so much for being here. The campaign commissioned a report by UQ. What did it conclude about the extent of this problem?
Well, Katrina, the report which we released today does show what we all know. It's harder in Queensland to raise kids than it should be. And when we compare ourselves to other states, actually Queensland's kids are doing the worst. The report demonstrates that by the time our kids hit primary school, a quarter of our kids are already behind with their developmental goals.
We were just discussing this in the ad break, talking about how everyone's been feeling that squeeze for quite some time now. Why the campaign and why now? Have things reached some kind of critical mass?
Look, I think so. Families are facing down an unabating housing crisis and increasing costs of living. If you look at the social housing register, we have more than 10,000 families waiting for social housing, families who have children. And what our services are seeing is that more and more families are fronting up to frontline services with needing help with food because they're spending so much on housing. It really is the right time for the government to step up and do more proactively to support families in Queensland.
Yeah, it's a massive waiting list. One of the things that you're calling for is a whole of government family strategy. What would that look like, and I guess what would be the cost?
We do have a really an historic opportunity here in Queensland right now. For the first time, the Christopher government has established a families portfolio and a minister for families in Minister Amanda Cam. We know that the Queensland government has then an opportunity to do more for families. We're calling on the government to come up with a strategy that reaches across housing, health and education, works closely with families and the community services sector to make sure that the most vulnerable families in our community have access to health, education and housing. We're not necessarily calling on the government for a big spend. We're calling on the government for targeted interventions to help the most vulnerable kids in our state.
Well, you've said you're not going to let up on this campaign until the election, so we look forward to checking back in with you throughout that time. Amy McVeigh, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, a gas cylinder buried in a back garden is being blamed for an explosion that brought down 2 apartment buildings in an outer suburb of Rome. A husband and wife in their 80s were taken to hospital in a critical condition. Dozens of others suffered minor injuries. Around 70 residents in 3 neighbouring buildings have also been evacuated. 5 children have been killed by a bridge collapse in Bangladesh. The temporary pontoon bridge in Jamalpur broke under the weight of holiday crowds who were celebrating the Eid holiday. Witnesses say it had been in poor condition for nearly a year. Officials have announced plans to construct a permanent bridge at the location. And an explosion at a fireworks stall in Malaysia has sparked chaos. The early morning blast in Penang, forcing diners and staff at a nearby restaurant to barricade themselves inside as the pyrotechnics blasted towards them. Emergency crews managed to be on scene quickly and had the situation contained in around 20 minutes. Surprisingly, no injuries have been reported. Well, in just a moment, the Gabba misses out again while there'll be no England matches in Brisbane next summer. And in sport, a halfback blow for the Titans as the Cowboys claim a pressure-relieving win.
On 7 News, holiday at home. There's never been a better time to see our great state.
It's your accommodation, it's all your main meals, it's your entertainment, it's even kids clubs.
From cruising the high seas to exploring Western Queensland in bloom. On 7 News, live at 6.
Cricket Australia has confirmed the Gabba has been axed from a jam-packed summer test schedule. As Michael Hammond reports, the decision is being blamed on uncertainty over the venue's future.
Good afternoon. Australia will play 4 matches in 31 days, but none of them here at the Gabba. Cricket Australia has today confirmed it couldn't commit to a game in Brisbane because of considerable uncertainty about the Gabba's availability due to Olympics infrastructure planning. The former Labor government wanted to demolish and rebuild the Gabba for the 2032 Games, but that proposal was later dumped due to rising costs and community opposition. Now the Gabba's future is guaranteed until the Games are held, with a new stadium to be built at Victoria Park. Queensland's cricket community is disappointed the Gabba has still missed out.
We lost the first test of the summer. That was pretty gutting as a Queenslander, and then you lose the test completely. It was pretty sad.
Being able to take the game to fans across the country is important, and Brisbane and South East Queensland and Queensland more broadly is certainly part of that.
The test summer begins in Perth on December 9 before Adelaide's day-nighter, Melbourne's Boxing Day test and Sydney's Pink test. There will be some international cricket in Queensland, with the announcement that our T20 men's team will face off with England on the Gold Coast, and there will be a test match against Bangladesh in Mackay. In 7 News at 6, we look at whether Test cricket will ever return to the Gabba.
Oh, Steve, a lot of controversy over that.
Shame.
All right, you got the rest of today's sport.
OK, thanks, Katrina. Good afternoon, everyone. Broncos captain Adam Reynolds has trained strongly to prove he's fit to return from a rib injury in Friday's Battle of Brisbane. Titans halfback Jaden Campbell's a chance to face the Dragons on Sunday after suffering a Category 2 concussion in their 14-point loss to the Cowboys. Tom Chester's copped a 1-week ban for the hit, taking the shine off a pressure-relieving win for North Queensland.
Ticking that first win off is always a challenge, and we've done that now, and we can move forward. We've got heaps of improvement left in us.
And Dragons forward Ryan Couchman's been referred straight to the judiciary over the hip-drop style tackle that ended Jermaine Hopgood's season. The Suns will contest Bailey Humphrey's suspension for this sling tackle on Richmond's Maurice Rioli. The review deemed the incident as careless, high impact and high contact, slapping a 2-week ban. The tribunal sits tomorrow afternoon. Cricket Australia has released the full schedule for the upcoming season, and it's hectic for Pat Cummins' Test team. A 2-match series against Bangladesh in August marks the start of an intense run of tests, including a South African tour, a home series against New Zealand, then tours of India and England. From early December to mid-March, the Aussies will play 10 tests in just 14 weeks.
I think it will highlight the importance of high-quality planning, management of players, players understanding what they prioritise, and that won't please everybody, but that's part of the challenge of modern day cricket.
Yeah, the brutal schedule means no Test players will be available for the Big Bash. This is the strip the Socceroos will wear at the World Cup in North America beginning in June. Friday night's friendly against Cameroon in Sydney is crucial preparation.
There we go.
Every camp is important, every camp is special. You just got to enjoy it. Enjoy every moment you get, if it's your first, your fifth, your 100th cap.
After Cameroon, the Socceroos play Curaçao at Amy Park in Melbourne on Tuesday week. Australia's Jess Hull won her second medal on the final day of the World Indoor Athletics Championships in Poland. Hull broke her Oceania record in the 1500 metres, winning silver to go with her bronze in the 3000 metres. Fellow Aussie Adam Spencer won bronze in the men's 1500.
Honestly, I think if I raced a bit better, maybe I could have got up for silver, but I just stuck to the plan and got me for third. So for now, I'm happy with that.
Peter Bowl finished fourth in the men's 800 metres, setting a new national record. Australia finished the meet with 5 medals, 2 silver and 3 bronze. And Katrina, don't forget we've got Webby's 6 again coming up in sport at 6.
I just wouldn't miss it. Thank you, Steve. Well, after the break in the afternoon news, the clock ticking on Donald Trump's latest threat against Iran. Can Brisbaneites survive the city without a car? Those findings of a new study coming up. And later after the weather, it's Archibald season again. The first entries arrive for the judges.
Live across Queensland, this is 7 News with Katrina Blowers.
Welcome back. Let's recap our top stories this afternoon. And a driver high on a cocktail of drugs, including meth, has been sentenced to 5 years jail for running down and killing a retiree at Northgate 2 years ago. The family of Mark Trestrail say they're disappointed with the jail term. The head of the International Energy Agency has warned the current shock to world oil supplies is now greater than the 2 infamous shocks half a century ago that triggered a global recession. And the King's baton relay ahead of the Glasgow Commonwealth Games paid a visit to Townsville today. The 5-day tour will wind up in Launceston on Wednesday. A man's body has been discovered at a home on Brisbane's north side. As Rachel Baxter reports, police are treating the death as suspicious and have called in homicide squad detectives.
Good afternoon. Police were called to this property on Navua Street at Strathpine just before 1 o'clock this morning. 36-year-old Byron Gray was found dead inside the home. The man was a short-term occupant there. 2 witnesses were at the property at the time and are currently assisting police. Police say Mr. Gray had some minor injuries, but nothing that would be significant enough to cause death, and they're now waiting for an autopsy. The death is, however, being treated as suspicious, and a homicide investigation is underway.
We don't have an understanding about what caused this death, and we are currently making those investigations to try and establish what has occurred and what led to this death.
Detectives and forensics were on scene today trying to piece together what happened. Neighbours say strangers would often come and go from the property, and they had even witnessed fights on the front lawn. Last night they heard loud music up until about 9 p.m. Investigations are continuing.
The clock is ticking on Donald Trump's threat to take down Iran's power infrastructure if it doesn't allow oil to start moving through the Strait of Hormuz. The president's deadline expires just before lunchtime tomorrow, our time. Iran, though, is warning it will respond in kind to any US attack.
This was a direct hit. Not far from Israel's main nuclear reactor, showing Iran can keep raining missiles across Israel and the Middle East, all while maintaining their almost total blockade on the Strait of Hormuz. President Trump told the Iranians last night they have 48 hours to unblock the strait or he would obliterate their power plants. Iran replied that all energy facilities belonging to the United States will be targeted in response. Only a day earlier, Trump said he was considering winding down his war against Iran.
Is the president in the process of winding down this war or escalating the conflict?
Again, they're not mutually exclusive. Sometimes you have to escalate to de-escalate.
There were no reported deaths from Iranian missiles in southern Israel, but Israeli health officials said at least 180 people were injured, like in this apartment complex in Arad.
It was a very shocking boom.
Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid said the attacks are proof Iran deliberately targets civilians.
Do you see any military sites or facilities around you? What they're doing is trying to kill as many civilians as possible.
Iranian state TV said the military intended the attacks on southern Israel to hit Israel's nearby nuclear research facility and reactor. Retaliation, it said, for Israeli strikes on its Natanz nuclear facility on Saturday. At least 15 people were also injured in Tel Aviv by debris falling from intercepted missiles. And in southern Lebanon, Israel is blowing up this bridge, it's said to keep Hezbollah operatives from moving south. Can Israelis still have faith in the anti-air defense that Israel is putting up here?
Well, we've had great success so far, over 90%, 92% interception rate. But even the best defense in the world is not perfect, but the best defense is making sure they can't fire these missiles anymore.
As the war in the Middle East hits petrol prices here, there's been an increase in service station drive-offs. As Mel Whiteman reports, at one in the southeast, the bowsers have run dry because the owner isn't willing to pass on soaring prices to customers.
The general store here at Somerset Dam has run out of fuel, and at least for now, the owners aren't refilling their storage tanks. They say it's not an issue with supply, but because of the soaring cost, price hikes they refuse to pass on to customers.
Just decided that we wouldn't get a fuel delivery, purely because we didn't want to have to charge, huge prices to the community.
The decision is also fuelled by uncertainty. Many of those filling up here are tourists going boating and camping, outings that for many Queenslanders could become a luxury if prices remain high and keep rising.
And we do get a lot of tourists pull up and, get some fuel, and so we might see a decline there because of the price and people aren't travelling or may not travel.
There's also been about a 30% increase in people across Australia stealing fuel. At the Aussie World Garage on the Sunshine Coast, they've had 3 drive-offs since last weekend, costing the business hundreds of dollars.
There have been a marked increase in what we've seen.
We'll bring you the full story, including where to find some of the cheapest fuel in 7 News at 6.
So as petrol prices soar, what about just leaving the car at home and finding other ways to get around? As luck would have it, researchers at Queensland University have just completed a study looking at this very question. Joining us now is UQ Urban Planner Associate Professor Dorina Payani. Professor, how was this study conducted? Take us through it.
We asked 10 people here in Brisbane, 10 men and 10 women, to give up their cars for exactly 20 days. They volunteered, and they had to be all adults, of course. It had to be people that were not already carless due to circumstance. So they could potentially drive. They had a car. And we followed them for those 20 days, and we interviewed them before they started the intervention, at the midpoint, and at the end to see how they went about it.
Okay, so I guess there are plenty of options, from public transport to Ubers and taxis to even, I guess, e-scooter rentals. How did they go?
Well, there are options, but that generally, the options are generally much better if you're in the inner city. If you live anywhere outside the inner city, then access becomes much more limited. Besides, we have to take into account the fact that the local population is very car-oriented. People grow up with cars, and so there is a very large cultural barrier to overcome there as well, in addition to the practicalities of car-free living. So, people managed to complete the experiment. There was some attrition, so some people dropped out; they just couldn't cope. But some people completed. So 10 people managed to complete it through the end, and they were all relieved. Unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, but they're all relieved to go back to their car at the end.
Oh gosh, so I guess, as an urban planner, is it an infrastructure problem or maybe an attitude problem, cultural, as you earlier said?
It's a bit of both. It's a bit of both. So those are the two barriers that need to be overcome. The context, the infrastructural context, the availability, especially of public transport for longer trips, but also micromobility, cycling and e-scooters, those need to be made much more available and much safer to use. But then there is also the issue of attitudes. I mean, because of the way we're conditioned here in Brisbane from childhood, people don't think too much about options. They just jump in the car if they need to get somewhere. So that's the silver lining in this study. The fact that some people said that even though they're not going to be car free all the time, they might be more car light. Now that they've completed this experiment. So that gives me hope as an urban planner that exposure does help people become familiar with alternatives, an alternative way of living.
Yeah, I love this theory. Associate Professor Dorina Payani from Queensland University, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And there's a push for Aussies to holiday at home this Easter as some of Queensland's favourite destinations fall victim to those volatile oil prices. As Amanda Abate reports, some operators are now dealing with mass cancellations.
Good afternoon. Well, it comes as no surprise Australians are a little reluctant to travel overseas right now, but even domestically, some operators are caught up in the uncertainty, seeing cancellations as Easter approaches. On top of that, as well as a cyclone, the cost to run some of these popular tourist attractions has skyrocketed. In Bundaberg, Lady Musgrave Experiences is paying an extra $2,000 a day on fuel and have to introduce a fuel levy to stay afloat.
So we understand it's hard for the passengers too because they need to travel, so their costs are going up. Trying to utilise these local attractions to get out and support some of the local tourism operators.
What we're really hoping is that we will see locals holiday locally.
The drive market has taken a hit, but the cruise market is riding a wave of popularity as more travellers seek the comfort and security of a holiday close to home.
Stay local, because you don't know if you'll be able to get back.
See, I'm not a flyer, so I'm on the boat. I'm staying on the boat. And it's free drinks, so I'm set.
You don't have to worry about airports or flying. Once you're on board, your holiday starts immediately.
Cities like the Gold Coast are also optimistic. Australians will choose to holiday domestically. It's just experienced a record year, 14.5 million visitors over 2025, cementing the city as Queensland's top holiday market, worth almost $9 billion.
Domestically, this result now puts us bigger than Tasmania and the Northern Territory when you put them together.
Bookings for Easter are looking pretty good, up on last year by about 4%.
Well, vote counting is continuing in South Australia, where One Nation now has one lower house seat. It's first ever outside Queensland. Meantime, Labor Premier Peter Malinauskas is back on the job after his landslide victory.
Peter Malinauskas was on a mission today. He was also on the tools with up-and-coming tradies at Tonsley. He knows they're the beating heart of the state's future prosperity as more skilled tradespeople are needed for the AUKUS project and our growing housing demands. But more tradies need to be trained. He's promised 3 new technical colleges in Gawler, Martin and Murray Bridge.
First one has to be open 2028. Which means no time to muck around.
Build them and they will come, according to those at the front line.
Working outside with my hands, doing something that I actually enjoy. And I just know that's what I want to do every day.
Being here helps set up our future as well much better, and it's a lot more relaxed and easier to have that.
My gut feel is it continues to grow and there's going to be more demand.
The Premier is keeping a watchful eye on the vote counting, with One Nation lurking as a growing force.
Where's Pauline Hanson today? Does anyone know?
Complexities with preference counting will give One Nation at least 1 and maybe 3 lower house seats. The Premier's steely advice for his re-elected MPs and his new ones.
I demand discipline. And that is a culture that is enforced at every level within the party.
A more forceful Peter Malinauskas 2.0 is already evident.
With just ahead, terminal chaos, long lines at American airports as Congress battles over money for ICE agents. And Delta Goodrem's bid for Eurovision glory.
On 7 News, holiday at home. There's never been a better time to see our great state.
It's your accommodation, it's all your main meals, it's your entertainment, it's even kids clubs.
From cruising the high seas to exploring Western Queensland in bloom on 7 News Live at 6.
If you're travelling to the United States, be prepared to spend hours in airport queues. A federal funding stoush has left airports across the country chronically understaffed. As Rob Scott reports, Donald Trump is looking at sending in ICE agents to make up the numbers.
It's spring break here in the United States, one of the busiest times of the year for airports. But this year, they're under more pressure than normal. At some, wait times just to go through security checkpoints are hours long. Queues at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, for example, stretch from one end of the terminal to the other.
It's just insane. I've never seen anything like this.
Frustration and anxiety due to a severe lack of security screening staff. Hundreds have either quit or just stopped turning up to work after going without pay for weeks due to a funding fight in Congress.
They're going to take other jobs to put food on the table and pay the rent. So I do think it's going to get much worse.
For the past 5 weeks, Democrats have refused to pass a bill to fund the Department of Homeland Security, which includes the Transportation Security Administration and Immigration and Customs Enforcement, hoping to force Republicans to agree to new reforms to ICE.
They're targeting American citizens and law-abiding immigrant families, and of course that needs to end.
With no sign of an end to the budget impasse, Donald Trump has now ordered ICE agents to deploy to America's airports from tomorrow.
This is about going to helping TSA do their mission and get the American public through that airport as quick as they can.
A move that's prompted mixed reactions.
If it helps the wait times diminish, I'm not worried about ICE.
They kind of operate by their own rules, and no one really knows what to expect. So even citizens themselves are not really sure what will set them off.
The Trump administration says it's still working out exactly what the ICE agents will be used for.
Checking finance now, and the share market has opened the week in the red with renewed US-Iran tensions weighing on investor confidence. James Tao from ING Bank has the latest.
Hey, good afternoon. The local share market has extended its losing run to start the week, falling for a third straight session, with further escalation in US-Iran tensions, pushing the ASX 200 towards correction territory. That's a 10% fall from its most recent high. The ASX 200 index has now fallen just over 9% since the conflict in the Middle East began a little over 3 weeks ago. Today finishing lower by about 63 points, or 0.75%, but at one stage was down by as much as 2% at its worst levels this morning. Miners were the major drag yet again, with gold stocks hit hardest. The price of the precious metal slipped around 11% over the past week. It was the worst weekly performance in around 40 years, and that led to local producers tumbling as much as 9% today. Meanwhile, energy stocks moved higher as the price of Brent crude continues to hold above $110 a barrel. Retailers were some of the other big winners for the day. The Aussie dollar, though, was a loser, is now back below 70 US cents.
Singer Delta Goodrem has launched her Eurovision campaign in Norway. Australia's Golden Girl performing her entry Eclipse before a sea of fans in Oslo. Eurovision kicks off in Vienna, Austria in May. Just ahead, everyone's a critic. The entries start arriving for this year's Archibald Prize. In 7 News, drive-offs, abuse and running dry, independent servos on the brink. No summer cricket tests at the Gabba. The King's baton hits the beach in Townsville. The push to holiday at home this Easter. And will the Broncos skipper be match fit for the Battle of Brisbane? 7 News at 6.
Good afternoon, Queensland. You're watching 7 News. Checking the weather now, and our run of similar autumn weather keeps coming at the moment. More sunny breaks, a little bit of patchy cloud, and the odd shower or even storm in the mix as well. As we move on to the satellite, we have southeast trade winds right along the Queensland coast. We're seeing a few showers, the odd storm in the southeast with some heavier falls up north, falls of 50 to 100 millimetres around the Daintree and around Cooktown, and storms in the far north, though no warnings are current. Now onto the forecast chart, we'll see a low pressure system, not a tropical cyclone, sweeping down south past the southern Queensland coast over the next couple of days. That'll bring an increase in winds and waves, but not wet weather for the southeast. Elsewhere, ex-tropical cyclone Narelle is set to push off the WA coast and re-intensify into a tropical cyclone late tomorrow. She could eventually sweep south and bring some wild weather to Perth in a few days' time. But in the meantime, Perth is looking sunny and hot on 30 degrees, similar in Adelaide, nudging up to 31. Then a bit more wet weather in Melbourne. Call it an afternoon shower storm and lots of showers and just 18 degrees in Hobart. Back up to the Queensland tropics. The Whitsundays might just rustle up a morning shower, but otherwise dry and mostly sunny on the east coast, 32 degrees in Townsville. Over southern parts of the state, more showers in that coastal stretch, especially from about Bundaberg through to Gympie, just a possible sprinkle up towards the Capricornia, and hot and sunny inland, Longreach, up to 35. In the southeast for your Tuesday, more showers and following that same pattern of peaking on the coast in the morning, then spreading inland in the afternoon. Winds picking up even further on the beaches, gusts of 50 to 60 k's an hour and staying warm, 20 to 29 in Brisbane. Then we're set to heat up later this week. Katrina, I'll have all those details coming up at 6.
All right, thank you, Tony. Well, it's that time of year again when the average person takes an interest in art. Entries have begun being delivered to the Art Gallery of New South Wales for the Archibald Prize. Among them, a portrait of Australian of the Year Catherine Bennell-Pegg and mountaineer Michael Groom.
I've been a climber for about 40 years, and across the years I came across Michael Groom and climbed with Michael on Everest and a couple of other big mountains in the world. And Michael's an amazing character who climbed after he'd had all his toes amputated. No, I only started painting a couple of years ago, but it's become an obsession and a real passion for me.
I'm feeling really excited, actually, yeah. No, really honoured to paint Catherine. She was a neighbour of mine. I just chose because she was just such an inspiring person, just for women in the space industry.
Very excited, very nervous, but hopeful. This is Odyssey with Ollis, so a painting of Australian artist Bernard Ollis. It is deliberately playful, unashamedly so.
This is Henry Liberman. He was a really renowned anaesthetist for all of his life, and he invented a medical tool and did a lot for women's health and children's health.
It's always a joy to bring it in, hand it over. I can't do any more touch-ups once it's here, so it's great to have that closure.
Well, entries close on Friday and the winner will be announced in May. That is Queensland's afternoon news for this Monday. Stick around now for The Chase and, of course, 7 News at 6. I'm Katrina Blowers. Have a fantastic